this video, which is part 2 of my story regarding grief, the unspoken. If you have watched video 1 that I did not too long ago, you would know the stories of my 3 losses of my brother and of my father and then my mother, who all died very close together. And it's been a year now since I lost my mom. It's been 2.5 years since I lost my dad, and it's been over 7 years since I lost my brother Kirk. And during this time frame that I've been in, from January 27th, 2013, and where I am now, which is February 16, 2014, I had a lot of soul searching to do. And grief by itself was the emotion that I kept buried inside of me because I didn't have time to go through the grieving steps that one must accomplish in order to start healing healthy and correctly. So I want to talk about grief. First of all, grief gets mistaken as depression. And those are 2 different types of diagnosis, 2 different kinds of emotions. You cannot take antidepressants for grief. All the antidepressants are doing is numbing your pain. The pain to where it has to heal by itself, where everyone is different, to where it takes time. It truly does. Grief is an emotion that is caused by a heartbreak. Some are more intense than others. Grief can be caused by a divorce, separation, a breakup, or death. Death being the ultimate separation. Grief is when you do not have a physical contact with the one person that you grew to know and loved. And it all depends on the relationship with that person and how much you truly love that person and how much that person was involved in your everyday life. You know, when it comes to your activity, daily living is the terminology that one uses when it comes to being, active, inside or outside of a home. And when that person dies, you're looking at an empty chair. You might be looking at an empty bedroom. You're going through that loved one's clothes just hoping that you can still smell them. When you are going through those steps, that is severe heartache. Your heart is shattered. Your life has stopped. Your heart begins to have this sharp, deep, piercing pain right here, where you feel like you're having a heart attack, and it's a deep ache, where you can just feel that your heart's broken. And sometimes that pain is so real, you just burst out into tears. You have heart palpitations. Some people, they can't get out of bed. They don't want to take a shower. They don't want to clean their house up. They don't want to fix themselves up. Some has a very hard time leaving the house, period. There's some who doesn't go to church after they lose a loved one. It may take months, a year, it could take 2 years. And the one thing that I have learned going through grief, it's healthier that you deal with these raw feelings. I'm a Christian. I believe in God and I believe in Jesus. And I just know that I wouldn't be where I am right now if it wasn't for God. Because God, He is real. And He is with me. And I do know that He does make miracles happen. And He also will find a way to help you find some comfort in knowing that your loved one is okay. But you got to be extremely still. And you have to be a believer. I went to church 2 weeks after my mom died, and I couldn't even sit there for 5 minutes without bawling. So I waited, and it was Mother's Day. See, my mom died on January 27th, and I went to church 2 weeks after she died, and I bawled. Then Mother's Day rolled around, and the month of May was my mom's and my brother's month. My brother was born on May 5th, and my mom was born on May 1st, and then you got Mother's Day, and then there was her anniversary on May 20th. So a month of May was really hard on me. And I went to church, and I bought the most beautiful flowers. They were all roses. And the preacher was really sweet and kind to where they put it up there close to the podium so I can look at the flowers that was representing my mother. And I thought that would get me through the service, but it didn't. I just cried. I was just wailing for my mom. I was just wanting her to come to me and let me know that she was fine. And I was missing Kurt too. And I was just thinking, you know, my brother would be turning 50 if he was alive today. That was last year. He would be 50. Going on 51. And I, thought about my dad, the First Baptist being his church. It was a church my dad grew up in as a little boy, the Baptist faith, and he was the reason why my mother and I became Baptists. And here I was by myself, sitting in church, seeing half my family was gone. And I just cried. And there's no one to talk to. People, they meant well. There was one friend that says, "Oh, I can't talk about it, Sissy. It's too painful. I hurt." And this person's not even family. And then there's other people that says, you need to quit having all these memories. You need to quit living in the past. You need to move on with your life. You need to find new friends. If the friends that you have, are not wanting to talk to you or spend any time with you now that, you're by yourself. Now, I do have one friend. She's an orphan like me now. She was only child though. But she listens. And she makes me laugh sometimes. But she's very smart, and she has given me exercises to use regarding grief. And she's not even a counselor. She just says, this is what I do, to make it not from moment to moment, but from day to day. And before you know it, a week has gone by and you haven't cried. So she's been there. She has given me a chance to express myself, where I cry when I'm talking about it. And here's what my biggest hang-up is regarding my losses. I wasn't ready for my mom to die. I did not want her to go. I wanted her to live. And when her body says no, and her mind was saying, it's going to be all right, she was not all right. But my mom was wanting permission to go. And I wasn't ready to give her my permission. And I had to lean on my two brothers, and it was my two brothers that said, Sissy, you need to go in there and talk to Mom and tell her it was okay to go. And I held my mom's hand, I was crying, but at the same time I was trying to be strong for her. And it was true. She was waiting on for my permission to let her go. And as soon as I did, as soon as I gave her my permission to go, that's what happened. She died. Now, my mom's death was a beautiful death. It involved around faith. It involved around Jesus, because my mom was very religious. She just had this special gift about her. But anyway, even though she did suffer, and it was a peaceful type death, which I am grateful for, I still was not ready for my mom to die. And I felt like then I was mad at my brothers. Because we're all different, the way we handled my mother's illness. I was more the person who worried, who hovered over her, who did not want her out of my sight. And she was the one that was clinging onto me, and she didn't want me out of her sight. My brothers wanted her to be more independent, where they would visit with her. And then they would go back to work and do what they needed to do because they had a wife and children. But we all equally did our part. And I guess they were already at that acceptance stage where I wasn't. I refused that my mom was going to die. I even told my mom I did not want her to die. And when my mom, she was in the hospital from August 15th, 2012 to, I almost say it was around November 16th or 17th, somewhere on one of those days, 2012. Well, my mom came home in November, right before Thanksgiving, and I had her house all fixed up, and it was clean, and it was pretty, and it was decorated with all the beautiful fall decorations. And my mom and I, we really had a good time, where it was just the two of us, and it was during this time, November and December of 2012 and most of January, my mother and I, we talked about everything. She opened up her heart and her mind, and she told me how it made her feel when Kurt died. And she told me that Kurt's death was the hardest on her, because it wasn't natural for a parent to bury her child. And she said she wasn't ready for Kurt to leave like this. And then when he did die, she heard all these rumors of people from our small town, people saying stuff that just wasn't true. And that's where I come into regarding my brother. It's just gossip that people spread, saying that my brother, was brain dead, or, it's because, he drank alcohol and he did drugs and stuff. Well, that's not what killed him, because he was clean for 5 years from the pot that he used to smoke, and that's all he did. He didn't do anything else. And I know that for a fact because he didn't like needles or anything. He wasn't that kind of addict. He was borderline on his drinking though, and we would tell him, when you drink, you are a mean drunk. You need to quit drinking, and you need to stay away from these low rent floozies, Kurt. I said, they're going to be the death of you. The way they sit there and feed you with all this poison that they're giving you. I said, they're making you into this person I don't know anymore. And here's the thing about Kirk. He took our grandparents' death really hard. Where he was grieving. He was the closest of my 3 brothers and I. He was the closest to our maternal grandparents because he was the firstborn, and they were very involved in his raising because mother, had my twin brother and I, and then here comes my youngest brother. And so my grandparents played a big role in raising my 3 brothers and I, and were there for my mom when she needed some respite from being a mom. And so when my grandparents died is when Kurt just went wild. Went to these bars, partied heavy and hard. But that's not what killed him. He died of a genetic heart disease that runs in our family. It goes back many generations. In our family, you die of heart disease, aneurysm, or cancer are the three illnesses that runs on our side of the family. My dad, out of the immediate family of his, he outlived his father, he outlived his mother and his brother. My grandfather on my mom's side, he lived to be 80 and he lived longer on his bloodline. On my maternal grandmother, I have a great aunt that lived to be 92, and my mom has a first cousin who's like 86. But my mom died at 72, going on 73. Her mother died at the age of 70. And and when my mom and I were having our talks about what it was going to be like when she dies, she was telling me that she hasn't seen her mother since she was 40 years old. And here she is, 72, going on 73. And my mom told me about her grief and how she always cried for her mama, even now. She even cried for her daddy. And then when my daddy died, that traumatized my mother and I. But Mom and I, we were talking about it. We had each other to talk to. And I think that's where I helped my mom out a lot, because my mom was very private. She was very reserved and conservative about her feelings, because I don't know if it's because she didn't trust very many people, or she just didn't want people to say anything negative to her about the way she was feeling. So Mom and I would talk. It was just like it. We talked every detail about Kirk, and then my dad, and then we got on the subject of her cancer. And I just blurted out loud, I said, Mama, how does it feel that you know that you're dying? Well, she paused for a moment, and she says, well, I don't know. I've never died before. And I went, well, Mom, what you're going through is what Daddy and Kirk went through and what your parents went through. And now that you know that you have it, you have cancer, and doctors are saying that you don't have very much time left. I mean, you need to talk to me about this, because I need to have some understanding. And Mom, she just held my hand, and she had to think about it. And she says, the best way I can describe it to you is that I am not in any pain. And I'm at peace with everything. And I said, even losing Kirk and my daddy, you're at peace? And she says, well, they're with me. They're here. She was actually seeing my brother and my dad. She even went as far as telling me that she could even hear her mother's laughter from a distance. So my mom was giving me a different perspective of dealing with death and grief. And I guess in some ways it did help me lot when it comes to what I needed to do. I cried a lot when my mom died. At first I was numb and I was in shock and I was mad. I was mad at her for giving up the fight. It's like she chose that she had to make a decision, but again, she had to have my permission, a permission that I wasn't really ready to give to her. But I gave it to her because it was the right thing to do, because I didn't want my mom to suffer any more than she already was, So now during this timeout phase that I've been in, which is hell, one of the things that I have come to understand is that I have felt guilty of letting go of her. Number two, my grief wasn't just on her death. It involved the death of my dad too, because I didn't have time to grieve for him. So I was getting a double whammy, and it was overwhelming. And being the only daughter, where I watched my brother die, I watched my dad die, falling over with a heart attack, and then watching my mom die, and I was their caretakers, their caregiver, where I had to have some help, of course. I had home help starting out for both, and I had friends coming in, sitting with them just so I can sleep or be able to go back to work. But what I was needing through my grief was comfort. And I was needing a sign letting me know that my mom was with my dad, and they're with Kirk, and they're with my grandparents, and they're in a place to where they're not hurting anymore. It was this month, February 11th, I was given a sign, a gift, and it was so real, so real. It gave me some comfort right here, to where that achy pain in my heart, it eased up, and when it did, I was able to breathe. Where I'm able to go to church. I went to church today. And I'm still going to my local support group, which is Christian based, of course. I wouldn't go to anything else that wasn't Christian based. But anyway, I wanted to make this video because this is part of my healing, to make these videos, to share my emotions and my feelings and my thoughts about grief. I know that I'm not in this by myself. There are grievers all around me. They're everywhere. There are some that are not as open yet. I hope that they'll come out and join the group that I'm attending locally. Or if they're not able to do that, that they could get on one of these closed groups on the grief, the unspoken, that touches on their losses. There's even a group for people who are living that hasn't died yet, but they have a terminal illness or they're going through, chemo or radiation. And technically that's where grief starts, when you're dealing with somebody that died of a natural causes. As soon as you hear a terminal illness, and like in my mother's case, it's carcinoid cancer. Well, that's a zebra illness. And the reason why it's called zebra illness is because what sounds like horses may not be a horse. It may be a zebra. And when they were calling my mom's cancer diverticulitis with the fatty liver, when it was cancer, that makes that into a zebra illness. Carcinoid cancer is hard to detect, but that doesn't give the doctors the right to do a misdiagnosis. And that's one reason why I love Oklahoma City. I love Mercy, OKC, and I love the Oklahoma Heart Hospital. They do not quit doing the research that is needed until that patient of theirs is properly diagnosed. And it took my mom 2 weeks to be in the hospital before she was properly diagnosed. And I'm glad I can live with the fact that my mom, the reason why she died of carcinoid cancer. I know why my dad died. He had a malignant heart disease. The muscle in the back of his heart was dead, and he had 2 more blockages, and it was unoperable. And my brother died of a heart disease called myocarditis. So I do have some closure there. They were diagnosed and treated, but it wasn't meant to be. They died of natural causes. Where some people don't have that, because they would have family members that might have died in a car accident, or the unthinkable, which is, they committed suicide, where you just don't have that closure. Now, some people do regarding suicide, because when a person's in pain, when they have suffered for a long time, that's what some people will do. And then there's some people that believes in euthanasia. I don't. But here's the main core of what I want to say in my message here. Grief is a part of life. We are supposed to have this experience. And if you are a Christian, you can go and read the book of Job about his story regarding all his losses. It's a test. And everyone's different when it comes to grief. To me, I don't believe in popping pills and covering it up with liquor. I just don't believe in that. I don't believe that is a proper, good way of dealing with grief. Grief is something that you have to feel, something that you have to get people to understand. When they say, "How are you today?" "Well, I'm not doing very good. I'm having a mom day." "Well, I'm sorry about that." And then they walk off. You know what people should do when somebody says, "How are you doing?" and you respond, "I'm having a mom day," and they went, "Oh, sissy." I miss your mother too. And just embrace me. Just give me a hug now and then, you know? Or they invite me to church. You know, Sissy, you don't need to sit by yourself. Come sit with us. That's a positive thing. That helps. And I have friends that do that. Matter of fact, I went to church today and sat with some friends. And that helped. You know, I made it through a service without crying for the first time. So that's my 4th time I've been to church since my mother died over a year ago. And today was a big step. I didn't cry. When you know people who has lost a loved one, don't push them away. Don't stop calling them. When you see them, don't go the other way. Because you don't know what your kindness and understanding would mean to that person, which would be a positive reinforcement that goes towards their healing. People who has lost a loved one likes to be able to talk about their husband, their child, their parents, their sibling, even if it is in past tense. Coming up with good memories that would make you smile and laugh is what a griever needs. It's part of the healing steps. And if you have a loved one who is grieving, and if all they want to do on that day is just stay in bed, let them stay in bed for a day. Then the next day, you say it's time to get up. It's time to get outside and let the sunshine hit our face. Let's go out to the cemetery and clean it up. Or let's go to a movie. Or let's go eat somewhere. Doesn't have to be fancy or anything, but there are going to be times when your loved one's not going to be able to get out his or her pajamas. And that's okay. It's part of it. Because grief, it represents the love that you felt for that somebody. And when you don't have their physical contact, you feel abandoned. And that's where that empty feeling comes from. And never ever tell anyone, let go and move on. Because that's the wrong thing to tell people. You can't just let go and move on like that. Not when that person was your heart. So y'all need to, if you're doing that, you need to stop. Because I know that I've had that said to me about 3 times, and I about snapped and told them that I am not letting go of my mom. I let go of her already and she's dead. I'm not ready to let go of the love that I felt for her and the memories that I have. And I probably won't ever be able to get rid of those. It will be right here. This is hard. But every day that I get up makes me strong. And when I'm strong, I'm able to help somebody who is now going through this. And I will stress again, grief is a part of life. It's something that we will all go through. And with some, we'll go through it more than once. I've had a lot of deaths in my family. My brother and my mom and dad were just the most recent ones. And I don't know if I'm going to be next or what with my dissective artery that I have. I mean, I may be here today and bam, I might be gone tomorrow. You get hit by a car or a train or, death happens. And as a Christian, I just want to stress this. We were brought up in a society where death represents darkness, the end. But if you read the scriptures in the Bible, death doesn't end. There's a transition. But you have to be a true believer in Jesus Christ. You need to find you a church home. And then you'll know what I'm talking about. Jesus is very real. And death does not end with him. And that is called faith. And if you have faith, you're going to see that your grief is easing up a bit. And when it eases up a bit, you can breathe. And when you can breathe, you feel alive. So that's it regarding this video. I hope it helped for those who are watching it. For those who are experiencing it, hey, I understand. I understand you. And I hope you understand me. Because we're in it together. Peace out.